Hello again, everyone. It is Gordon Majak here, back with another episode from the spiritual journey out here on planet Earth on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. How are all you dear beloved souls doing on this day? I am fantastic, and that is because I am so excited to share with you a book today, a couple passages from a book that is not only one of my all-time favorite. This is an easy top 10 all-time favorite spiritual book, one of the most essential books I believe in any self-respecting spiritual library, and that is the classic, the eternal, the immortal, The Prophet by the great Kahlil Gibran. And there he is, the enlightened one, the illumined one. Boy, you'd have to be illumined to write something this timeless, right? Written in 1923, over 100 years ago, if you can believe that. And I was thinking, how many countless millions and millions of lives and generations of spiritual seekers have drawn inspiration and wisdom from this book. I mean, just untold millions. And if you take that a step further, how much light, just pure light of divine consciousness has this book anchored on planet Earth over the course of 100 years. Amazing. What a book. And I was trying to remember, I think, to the best of my recollection, I think it's been just over 50 years since I first discovered this book. My memory on the date of when it first came to my awareness and came into my life, my memory on the date is not specific, but I do have a vision in my mind of where I was and what I was doing. I just can't pick a date. But to the best of my ability, I believe it was my sophomore year in high school, which would have been 1974, there at Bothell High School, Bothell, Washington. And I'm going to guess that it was my sophomore English class, maybe an English literature class, where we were reading a spectrum of, classic books in different genres, right, of literature. And I'm guessing even 50 years ago, this was just obviously considered such a classic and such an essential book in the field of not only poetry, as Gibran was a poet and a philosopher. This book certainly qualifies both as poetry and philosophy, and just pure spiritual genius in this book. My memory of this book is I just remember, I would have been 15 going on 16 at that time. And I just remember on discovery of this book just being in absolute awe and reverence of the beauty and the wisdom that was in these pages, that Gibran, truly a poet in his own right, not only a philosopher and a spiritual master, but truly a poet as well. And as you will see, his words just so incredibly inspired and so crafted and so deep. There's just so much genius in this book. I want to share with you a couple passages, a couple of my favorite passages here that have sort of stuck out to me as I look back on it now after all these years of loving this book, and things that have just proven to me over and over again as I've gone back to this book, that this is one of those books that the more you go back to it, it doesn't matter what your particular level of spiritual awareness or consciousness may be at any given moment, but this book will take you deeper and deeper as you go into it. And even after 50 years, coming back to this book now with the level of awareness that I have now, which is certainly greater than it would have been back in 1974, again, the deeper you want to go, the deeper that this book will take you. Just such an incredible work by Kahlil Gibran. The first section that I want to share with you is from page 29, and this is regarding joy and sorrow. And Gibran says, "Then a woman said, 'Speak to us of joy and sorrow.' And he answered, 'Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. And when you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. And that is Kahlil Gibran speaking on joy and sorrow. And again, this goes back to something that I talk about here all the time on the channel, which is this particular spiritual dimension that we find ourselves in here in the 3D material world. We have to contend with that little thing called the reality of duality, is the way I like to put it. And I think Gibran captures this just perfectly here, that you can't have one without the other, at least at this level. Now, I do believe that as we continue to awaken and we rise higher and higher through the spiritual dimensions, that we can enhance the joy and increase the joy and lessen the sorrow. But I think as long as we're in this realm where we're at right now, we have to accept the reality of the duality, and we can't have one without the other. I would imagine that in those higher realms, that when we think of them, we might conceive of them as of being heavenly or enlightened or the illumined realms, or maybe even impossible. But I don't think it's impossible. I think in those higher realms, those beings, they may not have perfect joy all of the time, the beings that reside on those levels or that maintain that vibrational level the majority of the time. It may not be absolutely, completely perfect joy all of the time and absolutely zero suffering ever, or sorrow, I should say, not suffering, but sorrow. But certainly the higher you go, I think that balance would tip. And when you get into the higher dimensions, that's what we all want, right? Is more joy and less sorrow. But yet, when I think about my own life, and of course, like everyone else, I want as much joy and as little sorrow as possible. But really, isn't the most beautiful balance of the whole thing the bitter and the sweet, and accepting both the bitter and the sweet? It's like, I love bittersweet chocolate and I love bittersweet life. Life is bittersweet. And I think the perfect balance, the perfect harmony of joy and sorrow in this particular dimension that we're in right now is understanding and accepting that it is bittersweet. Almost constantly, you can find bittersweet in your life and in the world, certainly constantly. But that is the beauty of it. And when we do move up and move into those higher realms, and as we each individually evolve higher and higher, well, we will certainly look forward to more of the joy and tilting those balances. But I think bittersweet is pretty profound and pretty beautiful in its own right. And that's what we have here where we are. The second section that I wanted to share with you, this is another one that's just, even all these years later, I mean, this one haunted me. I remember being haunted by these passages here. This is from page 50, and this is Gibran speaking on reason and passion. I remember being haunted by these passages here that I'm going to read in just a second. even as a teenager, and going back to them now at 65 years of age instead of 15, going back, 50 years later, and rereading these now, and the way it touches me now is, again, so much deeper and so much more meaningful even than it was to me then when I first described it or first discovered it. But it still haunts me. It just at a deeper level, just at a more meaningful level. So really, truly, I think the sign of such inspired genius and such just incredible inspiration from Kahlil Gibran in The Prophet. This is from page 50, and it says, "And the priestess spoke again and said, 'Speak to us of reason and passion.' And he answered, saying, 'Your soul is oftentimes a battlefield, upon which your reason and your judgment wage war against your passion and your appetite. Would that I could be the peacemaker in your soul, that I might turn the discord and the rivalry of your elements into oneness and melody. But how shall I, unless you yourselves be also the peacemakers, nay, the lovers of all your elements? Your reason and your passion are the rudder and the sails of your seafaring soul. If either your sails or your rudder be broken, you can but toss and drift, or else be held at a standstill in mid-seas. For reason, ruling alone, is a force confining, and passion, unattended, is a flame that burns to its own destruction. Therefore let your soul exalt your reason to the height of passion, that it may sing. And let it direct your passion with reason, that your passion may live through its own daily resurrection, and like the phoenix, rise above its own ashes. I would have you consider your judgment and your appetite, even as you would two loved guests in your house. Surely you would not honor one guest above the other, for he who is more mindful of one loses the love and the faith of both. Among the hills, when you sit in the cool shade of the white poplars, sharing the peace and serenity of distant fields and meadows, then let your heart say in silence, 'God rests in reason.' And when the storm comes, and the mighty wind shakes the forest, and thunder and lightning proclaim the majesty of the sky, then let your heart say in awe, 'God moves in passion.' And since you are a breath in God's sphere and a leaf in God's forest, you too should rest in reason and move in passion." I was thinking about those passages, and again, reason and passion, and how that little war has played out in my own life across so many aspects of my life. And just thinking back, just for one example, I just think back of how that struggle and that sort of internal battle between reason and passion played out in my decision-making processes as I've grown older, throughout my life, actually, just thinking back to when I was younger, even how throughout my life, various big decisions, impactful decisions that I made were the result of that struggle between my reason and my passion. And I think in particular when I was younger and getting into relationships because of the passion, both the decision to get into a relationship was the result of the passion, and to stay in that relationship for however long was something that was driven by the passion. But in many instances where I ended up deciding to end that relationship or change that relationship, it was my reason that was sort of bailing me out of the mistakes that I had made as the result of my passion, right? It was like my passion got me in trouble, and then my reason was the one that sort of slapped my passion and said, "What the hell are you doing? I mean, this just doesn't make any sense." And similarly, by the other token, going the other way too, I think of various things in my life, experiences in my life where I made a decision based on the reason of something because it added up, because it made sense. And I think of some of my professional experiences, where I made decisions and made moves and made changes based on, well, it seems like the sensible thing to do, or it seems like the logical thing to do. And I would get myself into a situation, and then again, it would eventually be my passion after whatever length of time may have passed. It was my passion that would well up and sort of acknowledge the wrongness or the dysfunction or the whatever the individual situation may have been, whatever the difficulty or the challenge or the struggle was in that situation. It was like my passion sort of woke up and slapped my reason and said, what the heck are you doing? We're so far off base from where you should be and how you should be feeling about something. And clearly you're not inspired in this, and you're not feeling this, and there is no joy in this. There is no passion in this. You're just doing it for all the wrong reasons. And in so many cases, and using my work life as an example, it was my passion that ended up getting me either, if not out of various situations, certainly drastically changing my perspective on them. And I wasn't just seeing them strictly through the lens of either the passion or the reason, that I was finding some sort of a workable middle ground. So I think it's just incredible that, again, it just speaks so much to Kahlil Gibran's just absolute brilliant artistry, not only as a poet, but as a philosopher and as a spiritual giant. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the prophet. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with it. But thanks to you, of course, for tuning in, and thanks to the beautiful soul. Gratitude to the blessings to that beautiful soul that was Kahlil Gibran. I will see you in the next video in a couple days or so. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you again shortly. God love you all. Take care.